All right, let's take a look at one of the trending tickers here this morning, and that is AT&T reporting results before the bell, missing on earnings, even as it added more customers than expected here. Now, this comes as Verizon came out with its earnings on Tuesday, which came in strong. So what's the play in the telecom space this year? We want to bring in Craig Moffett. He's MoffettNathanson's co-founder and senior analyst. All right, Craig, let's talk about this. Let's start with AT&T because we're looking at losses of shares just about 2%. There certainly were tidbits in this report that investors are taking issue with. But my question to you is, what do you think these results tell us just about the fundamentals of AT&T's business?
Well, look, overall, it was a quarter that was more or less what you expected. The results in subscribers, and you have to start, like any subscription business, with the subscriber counts, and the subscriber counts were pretty good. I think the challenge here is you look at this company and it's really not growing. It hasn't grown faster than the rate of inflation in a decade. You've had a lot of tailwinds during that period for wireless overall. And you look forward, they're not guiding to any material earnings growth. I think that's why the market is reacting negatively this morning, is the market had expected some material EPS growth. And you know, what you see is what you get with these companies. They're very slow growth companies. They pay a decent dividend, but the capital appreciation story hasn't worked in 30 years for the telcos.
You know, Craig, as the call had been taking place this morning, perhaps a lot of the focus may have not just been on the additions for subscribers, but also where the company is investing further here. Is there any of that investment, that CapEx that's going to be going out the door, that you believe AT&T has to get right in order to hit its next inflection point for investors?
Well, look, they have largely finished building out the 5G network, as have their peers. But the real question now is whether 5G will materialize as a real revenue driver. So far, it hasn't. It's been sort of a running in place type of investment, and an expensive one at that. On the wireline side of the business, you know, what I scratch my head over is the convergence strategy, right? They spoke a lot on their conference call about the power of convergence and the ability to offer a wired broadband solution and a wireless broadband solution. And that's a lot of what's driving the capital investment that they're making in fiber. Well, that's fine, but their fiber network will eventually cover something like 25% of the United States. What do you do in the other 75% of the country? You know, they talk about it as though they're advantaged, but I think a better way to characterize it is they are perhaps less disadvantaged than their peers. But if convergence really happens, the cable operators are going to win the war, because cable operators can offer a converged solution everywhere, and the telephone companies that they compete with can't. And that's actually why I think, for me, particularly with expectations quite low for the cable operators are more interesting at this point than the phone companies are.
That's really interesting. And Craig, on the phone side, when we think about the net subscriber additions and what's actually going to drive even more people to the services, we think about our smartphones and how every company is telling us that artificial intelligence is just going to unlock our productivity within our devices that we're carrying around, some of us sleeping next to, for better or for worse. But at the end of the day, is that going to actually carry through to all of the telecom players here? And is there one that's better positioned versus others if we do see devices see a massive type of kind of critical mass adoption of artificial intelligence, co-pilots, solutions, and operations within these devices?
Well, you know, if you see, I think I've been joined by my dog here on the sofa behind me. It's nice to know that she's paying attention.
She's into the convo.
You know, I don't know that AI is going to drive a lot of incremental telecom revenue. As we've seen in past cycles, there are big winners in these kind of big tech cycles. The telephone companies are rarely on that list. They provide the infrastructure, but the spoils tend to go to someone else. In this case, I think you could possibly make an argument that AI will drive significant incremental traffic. If so, perhaps that's a positive, but historically that's not been something the operators have been able to monetize. as the network goes, it may also drive some demand for edge compute that is processing out at the edge of the network. But there again, it's not obvious that the carriers are really the ones that benefit from that. So I'm a little skeptical about the AI transition. In fact, what the AI transition is likely to do in telecom is drive a handset cycle, and handset cycles tend to be bad for telecom operators, not good, because by and large, equipment revenues are passed through at cost or at a loss. And so to the extent that you see AI driving incremental upgrades, that's probably not helpful to the carriers financially, at least.
Craig, in terms of the demand and the trends that we are seeing here over the last couple of quarters, do you think we're seeing more of a normalization, especially when you compare it to maybe some of the frothy levels that we saw during the pandemic?
Yeah, look, I think I struggle with the growth equation for the industry anyway. The growth rate of the industry by units has been 2.5 to 3 times the population growth rate in the United States. That's clearly not sustainable, right? I mean, we know that wireless penetration is essentially fully penetrated. So you've had some incremental growth driven by promotionality and pushing extra lines on people that they don't necessarily need or want. You've had some extra growth from just migration of prepaid to postpaid services. But I suspect that one of the challenges is, and there clearly was, as you said, during the pandemic, there was some pull forward of demand and younger people getting phones for the first time. To the extent that that's largely behind us, I think expectations for growth for the industry are probably too high. And that's important because if anybody's going to fall short of their expectations, it tends to lead to increases in competitive intensity to try to right the ship, because nobody wants to fall short and see their stock price be punished. And so you see these kind of knee-jerk reactions competitively to try to drive growth when the market just isn't there to support it.
Craig Moffett, MoffettNathanson, co-founder and senior analyst. And of course, we got to give some credit to the lovely dog in the background as well here. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.